Okay, in this screencast we're going to cover some introduction to programming using the Microsoft Visual Studio. This one is Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. In here we're going to start by clicking on New Project. And it's going to bring up this window here, and you'll see along this side on the left hand side it covers a lot of the different languages you can use in Visual Studio. For the most part, we're going to be on over Visual C#, which is this one right here. It also looks like a Visual C and a hashtag or a pound sign. I've already got it clicked to highlight, so now in the middle, this is what the type of program we're going to create. For the simple program we're going to do today, which is entitled Hello World, we're going to use a Windows Form application. So I've got that clicked. I'm going to drag this up a little bit so I can see everything. Now, whenever we create a program, we need to change this name right here. And the reason is if you name it specifically what you want your project to be, it's going to make it a lot easier to find your file later on. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm just going to hit the backspace key. And I'm actually going to just do my initials, underscore, and we'll call this one Hello World 1, because later on we're going to have a Hello World 2 as well. And I'm going to click OK. And depending on how long this is going to take, you're going to see Creating Project. And in a moment we're going to have a little screen that pops up that I have a few different sections that I'll be able to show you. Depending on how fast your computer is and how new your computer is, this process right here may take maybe a little quicker or take a little longer. This particular computer that I am using right now is an older computer, so it will take a little longer before it comes up. But on the newer computers we have in the classroom, this should go pretty quickly. Now while we're waiting for this to load, a lot of times when we do an intro program for different programming languages, you're going to hear a lot of them are going to be entitled Hello World. That's just kind of an introduction. And here we go. Now this right here, this box, I'm going to drag it over a little bit so you'll see what I'm talking about. It says Form 1. This is basically going to be your program area. This is where the program we create is going to show up, where the information is going to be displayed, whatever we happen to decide to put into this program. Now the screen generally itself is going to be broken into 3 different sections. You've got your left hand section, which we don't have showing right now, which will be our toolbox. The middle section, which will be basically the workspace in the programming system, which this is where our forms and other items are going to be placed. And then on the right hand side is typically where you're going to find your properties window. Now this first little form here can be dragged, it can be moved, it can be resized. I can click the corners here and just kind of pull it and make it as big or little as I want. We'll try it about like that size for right now. Over here on the far left, I want to bring the toolbox up. And the first time we do this in Visual Studio, the toolbox is going to be kind of minimized or hidden to the side. But if I click on this one time, on the word toolbox right here, it's going to pop out a little window. And right up here, there's a little push pin looking icon. I'm going to click on that, and it's essentially going to anchor it to the left hand side. So now when I close out of Visual C# and open it back up again, hopefully this is going to stay right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on all Windows Forms, and this is going to essentially bring up all the items that we may need from time to time when creating our programs in Visual C#. And again, this middle section here is where we have our form and our workspace, and then over here we have our properties. Drag that up a little bit so you can kind of see a little bit more of that. Okay, accidentally clicked on the wrong icon, so it brought something up that I had to re-minimize. Now, for this Hello World programming language we're going to use, or the program we're going to create, I'm sorry, we want to have a button that's going to display Hello World when we click on it. So to create a button, over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on the button right here to highlight it. And once it's highlighted, if I move anywhere over here and click, there it goes. It just created the button for you inside our form. It's not going to do a whole lot. It's not going to really do anything at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on Start up here at the top. And it's going to start running our program. And again, depending on how fast your computer is, how new your computer is, this could take just a few seconds, or it could be a little bit longer in the case of this computer because it is an older computer. But once it's finishing setting up the program, in a moment we're going to see a window pop up in front of this one that's going to look very similar to what we have in our workspace. Okay, and here is our program. Well, actually, it's still in the process of loading. There it is. And we have a button. I can click on the button, nothing happens. That's just because we didn't really do anything other than create the button. I'm going to go ahead and now close it out. And it's going to bring us back to where we were before. Now, button 1, I want to change how it looks, and I want to change some other information about it. You can actually also resize buttons if you want. I can drag each size. I can make it taller, thinner, wider by just dragging that around. And then over here in the properties box, I'm going to scroll and I'm going to find the name. Naming conventions typically in your Visual Studio programs are going to be, if it's a button, we're just going to do BTN. And I'm going to call this one Click Me. And when I click it, and I type that in and click over here, you're going to see nothing really changed from what we're looking at in the environment, other than internally we're going to now refer to this button as BTN Click Me. Now if we want to change what shows up in the middle of that button, I'm going to scroll down until I find the text option, which is right here, and it has button 1, as you can see there, and I'm going to highlight it, backspace, get rid of that, and I'm going to type in Click Me, and as soon as I click back into the form, we're going to see that the button changes to Click Me, right there. Now, we need to have something to display on the screen. So I'm going to come over here to the left hand side and I'm going to find label. Highlight it and I'm going to click up here, and there's our label. Inside this label, and there you can kind of tell it's selected by the little dot there. I'm going to come back over to the properties over here on the right hand side, and I'm going to find name, and similar to that naming convention, I'm going to make this one LBL for label. I'm just going to call it Hello World. Again, you're going to see that that didn't change anything inside the label. So I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to find the text property. And there's where it says label in the text property. I'm going to take that out. I'm just going to type in Hello World. And when I click off here, you're going to see that the label now changes to Hello World. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to test this. I'm going to click on Start. And hopefully this came up a lot quicker. There's my button for Click Me. There's where it says Hello World. Now, what I want this program to do is when we click on Click Me right here, I want Hello World to display. So what we have to do now is we have to get rid of Hello World to begin with so it does not show up. So I'm going to close this out, go back to our coding. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to select the label, and there is a property called visible. And I'm going to turn that visible to from true to false. And now what that is going to do is that's going to basically make it so at the beginning of the program, this right here, Hello World, will no longer be visible by default. So let's test that out and see if that worked. And there it is. And again, so now we do not see Hello World at all. Again, I can continue to hit Click Me and nothing happens. So I'm going to close this out. And we're going to start doing some code. So I want the code Click Me, or the button Click Me, to actually do something when I click on it. So I'm going to double click on it, and it's going to bring up another window. And this is where we type in our code. And you're going to see that it automatically puts some code in for you, and that's because Visual C# knows kind of what you need to have in there. It's kind of giving you, hey, every program we use, or every time we click on something, it needs to do this, so it's going to fill it in for you. Okay, so we're going to put our code in right here where the mouse is. It's already actually Visual C#. I already put the cursor where we need to type it. It's going to be under this section called Private Void Button Click Me. So since it's already there, we're going to essentially change one thing. If you remember, we set the LBL Hello World, which is the label that says Hello World, from visible being true to visible being false when we start the program. So now when we want to use this code, so when you click on the button Click Me, it's going to change that from visible false to visible equals true. So I'm going to type in LBL, and you're going to notice that Visual Studio and Visual C already found where we had created and named that label Hello World, so it started to put that in for us. So I'm going to type in, if I double click on it, it automatically puts that in for me, and I'm going to click, or actually type, the period right here. And that period right here is essentially tells the program that we want to change one of the properties. The property, if you remember we're changing, is the visible property. I'm going to type in the first couple of letters. It brings it up right there. Double click on it. And now I'm going to say equals, where right now it's equaling false. I'm going to change it to equals true. Now, when we get done with a line of code, the last part of the line needs to be a semicolon, which is this right here. And now I'm going to hit enter. And if you do not put that semicolon there, Visual C# is going to be continuing to expect instruction there, and anything you type after that may confuse the program and give you results or error that you were not expecting. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to test this out. So I'm going to click on the start button here. Okay, so we have our window open right here where the program is. So I'm going to hit click me, and you're going to notice we don't see Hello World right now, but now if I hit click me, there's Hello World. Now we can do, so that basically tells us it works. Now we can do a few other things to this if you wanted to. I'm going to come up here and click on my form design. That's where we're designing this. So I'm going to click on Hello World. And we can adjust this in many different ways. We can adjust the font size by scrolling up here in the properties. And there's our font. And if I wanted to change the font type a little bit, and of course it's going to take a little longer. So if I want to make Hello World appear a little bit bigger, maybe even in bold, I can click OK there. So now we test it again. You can already kind of see in the form area where it has changed it. But now when I hit click me, there it is, a lot easier, a lot bigger to see. But that's just another little option we can do to change it. There are even some other things we can do. What if I wanted to get rid of Hello World? I can come up here and I'm going to make another button. I'm not going to try to, it tries to help us line it up a little bit. Doesn't matter that much to me. But I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change this one to BTN Goodbye. And I'm going to scroll down and find the text. And call it Goodbye. And what I'm going to do, visible, I'm going to change visible to false. So when it loads, it will not be visible. And just drag that down a little bit, make them about the same size. I'm going to come back up here to the click me icon, or the button, I'm sorry, click me button. And I'm going to add a new line. BTN Goodbye dot visible equals true semicolon. Now, if logic follows the same thing that happened up here, when we click on click me, it's going to make that button appear. Right now, it's not going to appear. So let's just test it. And there's our click me. We don't have any other button. We don't see Hello World, so I click on that. Here's Hello World. Goodbye is now visible. Click me is still there. Goodbye does nothing because we have not assigned any code for it. So now let's change a few little things here. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's try it. Let's do BTN. Click me dot visible equals, I want this to disappear, so I'm going to make it equals false. Put my semicolon and I'm going to hit enter. Now let's test it again. And it said there is an error. So I'm going to close this out. I'm not sure if it's going to let me do that. So I'm going to change that. I think I know where we can change it. We may save that for a later lesson. So I'm going to go back to my form design up here. I'm going to come up here to Goodbye. change this, and I want now, when I click on goodbye, I want the label to disappear. So LVL, hello world, dot visible. So right now it is equal to true, so I want to change it back to false. And my semicolon, hit enter. And I'm going to click start up here, and we're going to test this. There's click me. We have no hello world, we have no other button, so I click that. There's hello world. Come down here and I click goodbye, and it disappears. Okay, so that is essentially how we do this. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to create the actual application that will run without Visual Studio, because you don't want to have a program that requires the user to download and install Visual Studio just to run this simple program. So up here is build. I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to build right here. It even tells us what it's going to do. I'm going to click on this, and it's going to take a few seconds, and down here it will tell us if it succeeded or not. And to check to make sure it did work, I'm going to bring up my Documents folder inside Visual Studio 2015. Here's our projects. I'm going to double click on that. And they kind of hide this stuff sometimes, it seems like, so you have to kind of go through and find your applications. I kind of wish, and this is something I have to look at. There may be a way to set it to save it in a specific place, but for now, just know that we have to look under the projects folder, what you name the project. That's why it's very important that every time you create a program, you create your project name something that you know what it's going to be. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of hard to find. And we're going to click on it again. And this OBJ are your objects. I want to go into here. Debug, and go in here, and right here is hello world, and this tells us it's an application. I'm going to double click on it, and here's our program running really by itself. I hit click me, goodbye, click me, goodbye, and there's our program. Not a whole lot to it, not real fancy. There's some other things we can do later to change it, but for now, that is our simple program. Here it is, and if you ever needed to turn that file in, this is the file, the application file that you would turn in. And this is your very first basic Visual Studio, Visual C# Hello World program.